What happens when a U.S. president decides to send active-duty Marines into American neighborhoods? It's the kind of move that instantly raises alarms about constitutional limits and presidential overreach. That's why Senator Tammy Baldwin zeroed in on this explosive issue during a Senate hearing, pressing Navy Secretary Pete Hegseth for answers that he simply couldn't give. The exchange wasn't just tense, it was revealing, because Baldwin wasn't asking hypothetical questions. She wanted to know in black and white the authority being used to justify such a dramatic deployment. Hegseth leaned on vague assurances, claiming the president had constitutional authority and referencing historical precedent.
The specific constitutional statutory authority, the president made it clear that he relied on Section 12406 of Title 10 with regard to the National Guard troops. I need to know the authority that he is relying upon in terms of active duty Marines being deployed to California neighborhoods.
Senator,
so you'll follow up with me?
Yes, Senator, but there's plenty of precedent of active duty troops being used to support law enforcement. Historical precedent.
I'm not disputing that. I am just asking you to cite the authority under which the active duty Marines are being deployed to California.
It's in the order, ma'am, but we'll make sure we get it to you as well.
Thank you. I want to dovetail on a couple of other comments also with regard to the lack of specific detail in the budget request for the Department of Defense. I take great pride in Wisconsin's contributions to our national defense, and that includes many Wisconsinites who are hard at work building the Constellation-class frigate. There is no mention of frigate procurement, just like Senator Collins noted that there's no mention of destroyer procurement in the budget materials that you provided to this committee. My state makes the frigate. I'd also note that there's no mention of the destroyers, as I said. So really, we are looking at a very incomplete budget request when we are just 4 months out from the beginning of the next fiscal year. Mr. Secretary, this committee takes the appropriations process seriously. I take the hard work of Wisconsin's shipbuilders seriously, and I'd like your commitment to provide this material to the committee expeditiously so we can do our work.
Senator, we'll make sure you get all the information, but what I would say is this is a historic investment in shipbuilding, both the defense industrial base and ships. In Wisconsin, and particularly related to the frigate, it's been a program with a lot of problems and a lot of delays and a lot of modifications that have led to serious
Navy
challenges.
has called for many modifications to the plan.
I'm not saying that's it's all the fault of the shipyard. There are many ways in which modifications were made that changed an existing design so extensively that it led to a ship that was not even capable of the original mission it was supposed to execute. So our job is to make tough choices on some platforms like that may not be funded the way they were in the past, because we have to make some of those tough choices.
Well, we don't have any of the detail right now of what your plans are with regard to the frigate or the destroyer, and we need that information to do our jobs. Can you get it to me?
We have that information, Senator. We have worked in real time in 4 months to reverse a lot of priorities from the previous administration. We have those details and that information, and we will get it to you.
But the committee needs those details. So this committee has also worked hard alongside the department to improve recruitment and meet retention goals. The department is planning to separate several thousand service members due to your partisan beliefs about troops who are transgender. Mr. Secretary, I've seen your speeches and social media posts, but what I'm interested in is the sound policy analysis that we would expect from the Secretary of Defense on how this misguided decision will impact military readiness. My colleagues and I have requested this information from you, and we are still waiting to receive it. And so I will ask you now, what assessment did the Department of Defense conduct prior to implementation to evaluate the impact that this policy would have on our national security? Moreover, what is the cost to recruit and train thousands of individuals of comparable experience and skill.
Thankfully, recruiting is not an issue. It's at historically high levels, and we're proud of the cross-section of Americans that are joining.
What analysis did you...
But when Baldwin pushed harder asking for the specific constitutional or statutory provision, the secretary faltered. He promised to get back to her with the details, but by then the damage was done. The whole room could sense it. Baldwin had exposed the reality. This wasn't just about one deployment, it was about the boundaries of presidential power. If the administration couldn't cite its legal authority in the moment, how solid was their case? And Baldwin didn't stop there. She shifted the spotlight to another massive issue, the Pentagon's budget request. The Department of Defense had submitted materials to Congress that were frankly incomplete. Entire sections on ship procurement were missing. For Baldwin, this wasn't an abstract policy matter. Wisconsin, her home state, is a hub for shipbuilding, particularly the new Constellation-class frigates. Thousands of jobs and billions in economic activity hinge on clear defense contracts. Yet the Pentagon's request left out any mention of frigate procurement. Destroyers were missing too. For a state proud of its contributions to national defense, this wasn't just sloppy, it was insulting. Baldwin's frustration boiled over as she reminded the secretary that appropriations are serious business. Without detailed plans, Congress can't do its job. More importantly, without a transparent roadmap, America's naval readiness is left in question. How do you claim to be investing in defense when you don't even outline the ships needed to secure the seas? Her words cut through the bureaucratic fog. This wasn't about spreadsheets, it was about strategy, accountability, and trust between the military and the American people. That naturally brought the conversation to the troubled frigate program itself. What should have been a shining example of innovation had instead become a cautionary tale. Years of delays, countless design modifications, and spiraling costs had turned the program into a headache. Worse, the ships that were delivered often couldn't even carry out the missions they were built for. Instead of owning up to the failures, Hegseth tried to pin the blame on shifting designs and evolving requirements. Baldwin wasn't impressed. She wanted specifics. She wanted clarity. Promises of future transparency weren't enough. For her, this was a matter of national security. America's adversaries weren't waiting around for the Navy to sort out its procurement issues, and while the battle over ships might have been bad enough, Baldwin turned the heat even higher by drilling into one of the most controversial policies of the Trump administration, the treatment of transgender service members. She asked a straightforward question: what analysis did the Department of Defense conduct before deciding to separate thousands of troops based on their gender identity? This wasn't a soft inquiry. Baldwin wanted to know how this policy would impact readiness, how much it would cost to replace trained service members, and whether the administration had considered the consequences for national security. Hegseth's response: more dodging. He boasted about recruitment numbers, insisting they were historically high. He mentioned mental health issues associated with gender dysphoria but failed to present any actual analysis. Baldwin's frustration was obvious. She had asked for hard evidence, not talking points. By refusing to answer directly, Hegseth revealed the uncomfortable truth. This policy wasn't about readiness at all. It was about politics, and for Baldwin, politics had no place in weakening America's military strength. But she wasn't done exposing what she saw as misplaced priorities. Next on her list was the Navy's decision to rename ships during Pride Month. On paper, it might have seemed like a symbolic gesture, an effort to align the Navy with broader cultural recognition. But for Baldwin, timing was everything. With adversaries like China and Iran growing bolder, and with glaring gaps in procurement and readiness, she argued that symbolic gestures were nothing more than distractions. What mattered was strengthening the fleet, not scoring headlines. The secretary pushed back, saying the Navy wasn't interested in naming ships after activists, but the point had already landed. Baldwin had drawn a sharp contrast: symbolism versus substance. For her, real national security wasn't built on PR moments. It was built on tough decisions, clear planning, and constitutional accountability. By this point in the hearing, a pattern had emerged. Every time Baldwin pressed for specifics, Hegseth dodged. Every time she asked about readiness, she got rhetoric. Every time she demanded clarity, she received promises of future details. And that's what made this exchange more than just another Senate hearing. It revealed the deeper dysfunction at play. Consider the bigger picture: active duty Marines being deployed without clear legal authority, defense budgets submitted without essential details, ship programs failing to deliver, transgender troops targeted by policy decisions with no supporting analysis, symbolic renamings distracting from strategic failures. Each of these issues on their own might have been manageable, But together they told a story of an administration focused more on appearances than substance, more on short-term politics than long-term national security. Baldwin, for her part, wasn't afraid to make that story visible. Her line of questioning didn't just expose holes in the administration's arguments, it exposed the risks of running the military as a political tool. And that's where the true weight of this hearing came into focus. Because if the president can deploy Marines without citing proper authority, if the Pentagon can ignore critical procurement details, and if trained troops can be dismissed for politics, then what happens when a genuine crisis arrives? That's the haunting question Baldwin left hanging in the air. It's not just about oversight, it's about the future. If America's armed forces are being managed with this level of carelessness, what happens when the next real emergency strikes? When an adversary tests U.S. resolve? When allies look for leadership? Will America be ready, or will political games leave the country exposed? The hearing was more than sparring between a senator and a cabinet secretary. It was a clash of visions. One side demanded clarity, accountability, and a focus on readiness. The other side offered generalities, promises, and symbolic gestures. And in that clash, the stakes couldn't be higher. National security doesn't allow for shortcuts. It doesn't bend to political theater. It demands seriousness, competence, and planning. For Baldwin, the message was clear. Congress will not be sidelined, and the American people deserve straight answers. For Hegseth and the administration, the performance only raised more doubts. And for viewers watching closely, the hearing revealed something bigger than budget lines or ship names. It revealed a crisis of priorities, one that could shape the future of America's military for years to come. Because when you peel back the rhetoric, you're left with a troubling reality. Flashy announcements and half-baked policies can't protect the nation. Marines in the streets, incomplete budgets, politicized troop policies, and PR stunts might grab attention, but they don't build security. What Baldwin exposed was more than a few gaps. She exposed a dangerous drift away from accountability. And that leaves us with the most important question of all. If this is how decisions are being made today, what happens tomorrow? When the stakes are even higher, when the threats are real, will America's leaders rise to the challenge, or will politics continue to take priority over preparedness? That's the uncomfortable truth the hearing forced into the open, and it's a truth that every American should think about carefully, because the next controversy isn't just coming, it's already here, and it's going to be even more explosive.